Tamal Krishna came into the room. Prabhupada said, I have just been talking with Krishna. Prabhupada is on the edge of the bed. I'm there massaging his head, and I'm watching Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada is exhibiting the Astasattvic Bhav. We didn't know what to do. We were just doing kirtan. And when he whispered that mantra in Prabhupada's ear, Prabhupada stopped. All the ecstatic symptoms stopped. I was there at Prabhupada's disappearance. And I arrived from the West on October 8th in the morning. That evening, Srila Narayana Maharaj came to see Srila Prabhupada, and I remember standing at the door of Srila Prabhupada's room, nearby the door, watching him come in from the gate. And I was amazed at seeing him. I was amazed at seeing his visage. He seemed to float along the ground when he was walking. And he was very refined. I remember looking at him and thinking, it's a very refined, clean, pure Vaishnava, very, very different from a lot of the other Vaishnavas I had seen in Gaudiya Math. He was extraordinary in his visage. And he entered into the room, and they had that famous conversation, which is on tape in Hindi. Maybe the next day or the day after, I was in the room with Srila Prabhupada, and he was lying on the bed. And Srila Prabhupada was lying there in a very deep, peaceful way, totally not interacting with the external world. He was internal, totally internal, very deeply internal. Srila Narayana Maharaj, he said, come with me, come look. I want to show you something. So he started pointing to Srila Prabhupada's body. And he said, you look at your Gurudeva now. You see him, your Prabhupada. And you see how his hands, Prabhupada's hands were over his head with this mudra, like this. Both the hands, one a little below the other, over his head like this. And he said, you see the mudra? You see how your Prabhupada is holding his hands in this special mudra? He said, and look at his back. Prabhupada's back and head were arched like this. They were arched. So his head was here and his back, and it was like he was swaying with his hands like this. And then his 2 feet were on the tiptoes, one on the other. He said, you see the back is like this. He said, and see the feet on the tiptoes. He said, you see this beautiful position? He said, this is the dancing mudra, he said. And then he said, now he looked at me, and, with those blue eyes of his, he looked in my eyes and he said, now your Prabhupada is dancing with Radha and Krishna. And I was like, began to tremble. I couldn't believe, that. And I thought, wow, he actually knows this thing. So then he sang Sri Rupa Manjari Pada for Prabhupada. And it was so beautiful. Everyone began weeping, hearing him sing. He sang that beautiful voice of his, that resonant tone that he has, And it just overwhelmed all of us. And everyone began weeping, and we were amazed at the quality of the sound vibration that was emanating from his voice. And then, after a while, he and the brahmacharis left, and sometime later, Prabhupada came out of his deep meditation. And when he woke up, they immediately tried to give him water to drink. They said, Prabhupada, you need to drink some water. Srila Prabhupada said, no, I don't want to drink any water. They said, but Prabhupada, we've measured how much urine you've passed and how much water you've drunk, and you're passing more urine than water that you're drinking, so you're going to dehydrate. Prabhupada said, yes, I know. So then we became nervous because we realized that Prabhupada was doing this purposefully. They said, Prabhupada, are you going to leave us? Are you going to leave us now by doing this? So he said, call Tamal Krishna in here. So then Tamal Krishna came into the room, and he was next to Srila Prabhupada's bed. Prabhupada said, I have just been talking with Krishna. So when he said that, I've just been talking with Krishna, then I realized that Srila Narayana Maharaj, at that moment, it became clear. He's a pure devotee because he said that Prabhupada was dancing with Radha and Krishna, and now Prabhupada is saying that he was just talking with Krishna. So here it is. It's all laid out, clear as day, for me to see. My guru is a pure devotee, Narayana Maharaj is a pure devotee, because he could see where my Guru Maharaj was, that he was talking with Krishna. Later, on the day that Srila Prabhupada was leaving this world, Srila Narayana Maharaj came in the room. I watched him come in the room. He walked in behind me, and then he kneeled down. So Prabhupada is on the edge of the bed. I'm there massaging his head, and I'm watching Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada is exhibiting the Astasattvic above. His body is trembling like this, and then the hairs are standing on end, and then tears are rolling from his eyes, and then he's roaring, and he's belching, and all these different ecstatic symptoms are emanating from his body. I'm looking at it and said, wow, he's giving us a class in Nectar of Devotion, only in reality. We're seeing it. We're seeing what he actually is written about in the books. And so he just, Prabhupada was exhibiting all these beautiful ecstatic symptoms, and we didn't know what to do. We were just doing kirtan. And Srila Narayana Maharaj came in the room. He came behind me, and he kneeled down next to the bed. So I'm right there. I'm 1 foot away from this. I had a front row seat to this whole exhibition that happened. And Srila Narayana Maharaj leaned forward, and he put his hands like this, and he whispered some mantra in Srila Prabhupada's ear. And when he whispered that mantra in Prabhupada's ear, Prabhupada stopped. All the ecstatic symptoms stopped. And I thought, wow, this is like Chaitanya Charitamrita. I was like watching the books come alive, where Swarup Damodar would recite mantra in the ear of Mahaprabhu, and his ecstatic symptoms would subside. So I'm watching this play between these pure devotees. And then all of a sudden, Prabhupada takes his hand like this, and he pulls all the way up over his head, over Narayana Maharaj's head, and he gives Srila Narayana Maharaj a blessing. So I was so fortunate in my life to witness these amazing amazing pastimes between, this is my first introduction to Srila Narayana. The first time I meet him, he's giving me shiksha. He's teaching me about Krishna consciousness, about my Guru Maharaj. He's showing me things about my Guru Maharaj that I had no way of understanding or realizing otherwise. Then later, when he came to America, I met him again. I met him again in 1996. I went to see him when Srila Govinda Maharaj had left. He had been coming every year to America, and I would see him every year, 96, 97, 98, 99, 2000. I just would come and see him. I'd give a donation. I'd offer my obeisances, but I would never join him. And so finally he said, what is the matter with you? Every year you come here, you give me money and you go away. Why don't you stay here and hear me speak? Why don't you listen to the Hari Katha? And I had this dream earlier, about a week or so ago, where Srila Prabhupada had come to me and he said, by now you were supposed to be a realized soul. What happened? And he was standing there with his cane, pointing his cane at me, and I became very worried. And so when Gurudeva was shouting at me like this, I looked up at Gurudeva and I saw Prabhupada again, standing there with the cane, and I realized this is Prabhupada coming to chastise me. So I went to hear Gurudev speak that night, and then the next morning I had the realization that the only time I made advancement was when I was with Srila Prabhupada hearing from him, and when I was with Srila Govinda Maharaj hearing from him, and that since Govinda Maharaj left and I wasn't hearing from any pure devotees, that I wasn't making any progress in my spiritual life. And I realized that I had to hear from Srila Gurudev if I wanted to make progress in my spiritual life.